All right, hello everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, September 17th, 2015. This may be posting a little bit late. This may be posting on Friday. It's been one of those kind of crazy days. Pardon me, but the Nefarium has been, again, very busy this week, and this one is a really peculiar development that I want to bring your attention to for a number of reasons. Pardon me. And a lot of them having to do with the developments that have been going on in Russia and Saudi Arabia over the past couple of years. As many of you know, Saudi Arabia has been going through somewhat of a kind of internal power struggle, a succession crisis for the past few years, but this now appears to be more or less resolved, and there's been some interesting changes in Saudi policy that have caught not only my attention, but a lot of you guys out there have been sending me these things, and has caught the attention of Sputnik in Russia, the Russian online journal Sputnik. This article is very interesting. The title is Russo-Saudi Oil Deal Agreement May Leave U.S. Hawks Out in the Cold. And I want to read this article or portions of it to you because there's some significant implications here for the history of Western geopolitics in the region, and some certainly significant long-term implications if these developments actually do continue as they appear to be doing. All right. What if Russia joins OPEC and changes the established Anglo-American oil cartel's global economic order? F. William Engdahl asks. Now, before we go any further, a lot of you who've read my books know that F. William Engdahl is a fellow that I respect as a researcher. I like his thought process, his reasoning process, and he's actually the one that is noticing these trends, and it's his observations now that are being picked up and run in Sputnik magazine and also in RT. So in other words, these two Russian media outlets are picking up on an American observing their country's geopolitical moves. All right. So this is what the Sputnik article says, quote, if Russia and OPEC countries enter an alliance, the oil-producing powers of the Middle East would significantly bolster the development of the China-led New Silk Road Economic Belt Project, the American-German economic researcher and historian F. William Engdahl suggests. That project, to recall, is already well underway, and Russia and the the Eurasian Economic Union states have recently agreed with China to integrate the rail route development of both. The development of huge new seaports in Myanmar and other sites around Eurasia and the Indian Ocean will directly link the Gulf countries to that Eurasian booming new economic market and beyond, the author notes in his article for New Eastern Outlook. Indeed, this is Sputnik now. This is very, very crucial to understand that this is now Sputnik talking. Indeed, Engdahl's suggestion is not groundless. Citing the CEO of Russia's state-owned oil company, Rosneft, Igor Sechin, all right, the economic researcher called attention to the fact that Saudi Arabia is now seeking a, quote, formal market share agreement with Russia, unquote. Riyadh even went so far as to offer Moscow membership in OPEC. And Engdahl emphasized this, adding that the move is aimed at stabilizing world oil markets. In response, Sechin hinted that OPEC's golden age in the oil market has been lost. In other words, Russia was reminding Saudi Arabia that with the development of the Russian energy reserves, the Arabo-Islamic lock on the world's oil production, its influence has waned. Okay, that's a key crucial point here for what's going to come up. In response, Sechin hinted that OPEC's golden age in the oil market has been lost, referring to the recent sharp fall in oil prices. Now, that sharp fall, you'll recall, was something that the United States has pressured Saudi Arabia into doing as a measure of economic warfare against Russia to strike at the Russian oil industry. But what's really done, as this Sputnik article points out, it has crippled the American shale oil development, which was booming only a year ago and now has all but collapsed because of the collapse in oil prices. Now, according to Engdahl, Western media has already jumped to the conclusion that Sechin rejected the offer. However, quoting international affairs analyst Alexander Mercouris, the economic researcher suggested that Sechin's statement can be seen as an opening Russian negotiating position with the Saudi OPEC offer. Now, one more paragraph at the end of this Sputnik article, and then I want to kind of break it down and give you what I think we have to be looking at and concerned about over the long term. The potential agreement between Russia and the Saudi-led OPEC oil producers of the Middle East could reconfigure the established order of world energy suppliers. Furthermore, it would secure the world's largest pool of hydrocarbons by the nations of Russia, China, the Indian subcontinent, South Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa. Needless to say, the Anglo-American hawks with their endless war strategy aimed at grabbing global natural resources would be left out in the cold, unquote. Now, as you can see, what the game is all about here has been over who gets to have the greatest share of influence within the disposal of Middle East and Central Asian petroleum and other energy resources. That, at least, is the standard analysis. Now, I'm going to follow that standard analysis here. I'm going to follow that presupposition here, although I don't think it's a complete presupposition. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to follow it here. And the first thing I want you to notice is, as I've pointed out, this is now two Russia media outlets, because we've had similar reportage of Engdahl's article on RT. This is two Russian media outlets following American analysis of what they are up to, all right? So that's in itself significant. But I think the real significance here is the long-term geopolitical implications of what we see going on. Russia has now recently re-injected itself into the Syria situation. And what Russia is going to try and do is portray the West as the primary and principal destabilizing element, and incidentally portray the West as the principal backer of radical Islamicist regimes. And this has an implication for Saudi Arabia, as we're going to see in a moment. But Russia is going to try and do this and also save the day and stabilize the situation in Syria. Over the short and middle terms, I don't know that they're going to be successful. Over the long term, I think their prospects are quite good if they can hang in there and stay the game. All right. Now, here's why I think that. If you look at the Western powers, particularly the United Kingdom, France, and then later the United States, the principal Western powers have had a long history for the last 100+ years of backing certain nationalistic groups in the Middle East. Think only of the French and British and Syria, okay? There's interesting articles coming out now about the history of Syria, and I hope to be blogging about some of that. But there's interesting articles coming out demonstrating that what the Western powers have done is that they have deliberately kept these nationalistic movements out of the picture. They've kept moderating forces within Islamic cultures out of the picture, and they have installed and helped to create some of the most repressive regimes, all in order to secure their own oil and petroleum position in the Middle East. Now, regarding this history then, from the Muslim point of view, from the point of view of Arab Muslims, of Arab Christians, and so on, you're going to be looking at this long history of the West with a jaundiced eye. There are two Western powers, on the other hand, that don't have quite the same murky track record. One is Germany, and that track record, depending on how you interpret it, could be viewed as murky. But the other one is Russia. And this is very interesting because what you see going on now, if you look at the way Russia is positioning itself, Russia was instrumental in helping broker the deal with Iran. Russia is now re-injecting itself into the Syrian situation, and in the last few years, as these internal conflicts within Saudi Arabia appear to be, for the moment, becoming more or less finalized, and we've seen this new Saudi turn to Russia. That, folks, is huge, because Saudi Arabia has been a principal key element within the French, American, and British control and influence within the region. For Saudi Arabia to now to start turning to Russia for negotiation about membership in OPEC and negotiation for arms and other things, this is a huge development. I can't tell you how huge this is, because it's also Russia that's been one of the primary supporters of Iran, which is a regime that Riyadh hates. Okay? Now, this is going to be very interesting because it's putting Russia both in the catbird seat and putting it somewhat on the defensive. Because depending on how the Saudis play their cards, remember, they've got no oil influence over Russia like they do over the West. They've got no such influence over Russia. So depending on how they're going to play their cards, Russia could either end up being the big peace broker in the Middle East, or it's going to have to be making a choice between Tehran and Riyadh, all right? And I suspect that that may be part of the agenda that the Saudis have in mind. They want to decouple Russia from Tehran. I don't think they're going to be successful. And in fact, I think you're going to see the Russians know the soft culture, soft power game very well. And I think this is a development that we absolutely have to watch, folks. This is going to be a story that's going to be with us, I think, over the next decade. Depending on how the United States plays its cards now, we could either be driving Saudi Arabia into the hands of the Russians, and that would really, really change fundamentally the balance of power in the world. The American position within Eastern Europe, I think, would be in severe danger if this happens. So my plea here is for some sanity in American foreign policy. Can we get off the post 9/11, walk around the world, bomb everybody, and expect that everybody is going to end up being our friend? The only reason that we see these developments taking place is as a reaction to this policy of unipolarism. It's not working. It is not for the best interest of the Western Alliance. It's certainly not for the best interest of the United States. And these types of developments, I think, are the proof in the pudding. So hopefully, as we're in this selection cycle, we'll have some sanity and reasoned discussion, not the staged discussion that we see on the American major media, but real questions from real people with real responses. Folks, if you haven't got a clue in Washington or New York, those days are over, and you'd better get your ball game together, because these types of developments are too significant to be ignored and handled in the usual bumbling, gum-chewing, backslapping American way. We have to be much more sophisticated players than we have been. All right. That's it for my news and views from the Nefarium. As I said, folks, this week was a doozy, and I'll see everybody on the flip side. Bye-bye, and God bless.